First order of business here is to approve the agenda. Does anyone have any comments or additions or changes to the agenda? Not seeing any hands raised. We'll consider the agenda approved. The next order of business is to approve the July 2nd, 2025 Technical Advisory Committee meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion, or if anyone has any changes they'd like to add first.
So moved. Chris Hartzell, Woodbury.
Thanks, Chris. Do we have a second?
Second, Jim Kislucher.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye by roll call. Turn over to you, Joe.
Anoka County, McPherson.
Aye.
Carver County, Robgent.
Aye.
Dakota County, Laborie.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Ellos.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Isaacson.
Aye.
Scott County, Jensen.
Aye.
Washington County, Leitner.
Aye.
7W or Extended Urban Area, Houseman. Or Witter. Egan, Mathis.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Ellis.
Abstain.
Fridley, Kozlucher.
Aye.
Shenhausen, Howley.
Aye.
Brooklyn Park, Culver. Woodbury, Hartzell.
Aye.
Lakeville, Omi. Oh, I think Paul said he wouldn't be able to be here. Plymouth, Thompson. Minneapolis Engineering, Hager.
Aye.
Planning, Mayel.
Aye.
St. Paul Engineering, Nick Peterson.
Aye.
Planning, Collins.
Aye.
Metro Transit, On.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Fighton.
Aye.
Bicycle, Sabota.
Aye.
Pedestrian, I know Turner Bargain isn't here. Scipione, are you here? Nope. Okay. Deed, Eddie.
Abstain.
Mac, Reef. Community Development, Boylan.
Aye.
Freight, Meyer. MnDOT Metro, McCartney.
Abstain. I was absent from the July meeting.
MPCA, AO.
Aye.
Met Council, MTS, Hinneker.
Aye.
And Tab Coordinator, Kotsukos.
Aye.
Chair, that is 21 ayes and 3 abstentions, and all concerns about quorums are way off base on my part.
All right, thanks, Joe. Wonderful. All right, next we'll move into the public comment section here. Do we have any members of the public that would like to offer any comments, either about the agenda today or other topics?
Nobody checked in with us, Chair.
All right, thank you, Joe. I'll offer that one more time. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on today's business or any other topics? All right, not seeing any, we'll move on. Next, we'll move into the TAB report. I'll turn it over to Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. TAB met on July 16th. For the Chair's report, Chair Hovland provided background information on the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement that is now posted on the agenda. We plan to have more discussion at the August TAB Executive Committee meeting. In the meantime, subcommittees can keep it in mind as they develop their work plans and meetings. We'll learn more at a future TAB meeting about the commitments and acknowledgement development process, and this will inform TAB's use of it. Deb Barber introduced Ellison Wakow, the Council's tribal liaison, and she will be part of ongoing discussion as TAB engages with this work. For the MnDOT report, Connie Sahibjan reported that statewide there have been 177 fatalities, and Metro-wide there had been 74, with among these, that's 14 pedestrian and 9 motorcycles. The Minnesota highway freight program solicitation is open until September 3rd. 51.2 million is available with half for each year, 2029 and 2030. For the MPCA, Frank Kolash reported on the update of the climate action framework. Another opportunity for stakeholder input will be held in September with the completion of the plan expected at the end of 2025. And let's see. The electric school bus grant is combining VW settlement funding and federal grant from the Inflation Reduction Act and will receive 9 electric school buses in Minnesota. And MPCA is working with 9 agencies on extreme heat guidance for outdoor workers. For the MAC report, Carl Krim has submitted a report to be read. The federal government decided that shoes are no longer need to be removed at security, and MSP is starting to use enhanced passenger processing. This uses facial recognition for incoming U.S. citizens arriving on international flights. This will reduce time going through customs. And Bridget Reif reported that MAC commissioners have been appointed. For the Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barber reported that the council appointed 2 new council members, Mark Jenkins and Victor Obisakin. And now, as a result, with Mark, he had been a TAB member, and his alternate, Torrin Gustafson, was approved to move up to as the TAB the alternate is moving up to be the TAB representative. The last committee of the whole meeting met in Chaska. Metro Transit provided transportation for the Hortman Memorial Service. The B line has been in operation for almost a month as of the TAB meeting. In a 3-week ridership report, ridership is up 23% over the previous Route 21, with almost 8,000 riders per day. And a future update on the details of boardings was requested by a TAB member along the B line. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported Maple Grove is offering MyRide microtransit service for youth who are not yet licensed to drive. Maple Grove and Plymouth Metrolink are coordinating technology changes. Southwest Transit fixed route rider surveys, reasons of riding are coming back to indicate the primary reasons are costs of driving and parking. Only 15% cited changed work schedules. And Southwest will test automated passenger counts on buses using AI in place of manual counting. And MBTA started an outreach and marketing campaign called Metro Moves, and their express riders were served to learn more about why they commute. For business items, TAB approved the following items. They approved the 2 streamlined tip amendments, one for MnDOT's I-494 sign replacement, and 2 MnDOT signal replacement cost increases, which came through TAC last month. They also approved the review of the Flying Cloud Airport 2040 long-term comp plan. And they had information items on the Easy Pass update, transportation GHG emissions impact assessment, an update on the active transportation work group. They had a meeting that was scheduled July 25th, and then Charles Carlson provided an update on transit funding allocation. And that's my report.
Thanks, Elaine. Any questions from the members for Elaine? Okay, not seeing any. Thanks, Elaine. That was a good detailed report. Next, we'll move on to the committee reports and business. The first item here is the executive committee. We did meet this morning to discuss the agenda items that you see on the screen before you. We also discussed whether we're going to have an in-person or a virtual meeting in September. As of right now, we're not 100% sure on when we'll see the draft regional solicitation applications. But if we see them in time and the members have time to review them, possibly even, I'm not sure if there'll be an opportunity to get some of the working groups to meet before that to talk about the draft applications and any changes. If there's ample time with that, we may look at doing an in-person meeting in September so that we can talk about it as a group, as the TAC. If not, the September meeting will likely be a virtual meeting, and then we'll meet in October in person. So just stay tuned. You'll see some information from Joe Barbaro over the course of the next couple of weeks on that. And that's all I have for the executive committee. Any questions? Okay. Not seeing any, we'll move on to the next item. We'll hear an update from the TAC Transit Technical Working Group. I believe Bradley's with us today to provide an update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm Bradley Bobbitt. I'm a planner with Met Council MTS and staff to the Transit Planning Technical Working Group, which is a technical subcommittee to TAB. We met on July 24th. We actually had a pretty full agenda. We had 5 items that we had presentations on and discussion on. The first being the transit funding allocation policy presentation, which was the same presentation Charles Carlson gave to TAB, I believe last month. We had an update on 2025 Metro Transit ridership trends, a discussion of Washington County's regional sales and use tax transit funding uses from Lissa Leitner, a discussion of the arterial BRT plan update from Kyle Burrows at Metro Transit, and then finally some discussion on the microtransit regional policy study. That last one looking more at how we're looking at categorizing microtransit services around the region for purposes of performance measurement and service kind of expectation setting. We generally had good discussion, quite a bit, particularly on the Washington County presentation, as well as the transit funding allocation policy presentation. And we will be meeting again in September.
All right, thank you, Bradley. Any questions from the members? Okay, appreciate that update. Next, we'll move on to the Planning Committee, and I'll turn it over to the Planning Committee Chair, Gina Medico.
Thanks, Joe. TAC Planning met on July 10th. We had 2 action items that will be presented here today. The first is the release of the draft 2050 TPP Amendment 2. This is an update to the aviation system plan. I think Joe Whiting has a presentation for you, which will explain it. This item did pass TAC Planning unanimously with a pretty minimal discussion. Joe, are you?
Oh, yep. Sorry, I thought we were going to go.
Here and ready to present?
I'll take over. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Chair.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, so today we'll be doing a little different because this got bumped on the info item stage a couple times last couple of months. So I'll briefly go over some of those info item topics that we discussed at TAB and TAC Planning, and then we'll go right into the action item. But just wanted to give a little information on here before we actually voted to release for public comment. So yeah, I'll just go over on the agenda here quick, just the Met Council's role in regional aviation, the work we did to connect the aviation system plan to the Regional Development Guide, Imagine 2050. Briefly, some aviation industry trends that we've developed papers for that are on the project website, and then finally just some overview of the content that's being changed with this update, and then looking at the next steps for the point we're at right now with the release for public comment. So I always like to include this slide just to remind everybody why we're here talking about aviation. This is not something that is federally mandated. However, it is in the Transportation Policy Plan as a system plan. The state statute requires the Met Council to prepare the regional aviation system plan for the 7-county region. It also requires what are known as long-term comprehensive plans. So that flying cloud plan that came through last month. These plans that are reviewed against our aviation system plan are also a key component of those plans. And those plans are required to conform to the regional systems, which is that regional aviation system, and are required to be consistent with the regional policy, hence that consistency review. One key aspect of the regional aviation system plan here I'd like to point out is that the Met Council, unlike our other system plans in the TPP, this is not an investment plan. So the council does not provide or allocate any direct funding for aviation or operate those facilities, unlike transit and highways. So it's a little different from the other plans, which are our investment plans, whereas this is just a system plan, hence the name difference. So one of the things that we worked quite a bit on earlier at the beginning of this year, end of last year through this process was really looking at those regional aviation policies and aligning them with our new regional development guide, which was adopted in February. So through this process, we established what we're calling small policy review teams made up of both local communities impacted by our regional airports and also aviation industry stakeholders and other agencies within the aviation industry. These two teams met parallel at the same kind of a parallel process. Both had 3 meetings, which the first meeting looking to really review those existing policies as they are drafted, then looking to draft and update those policies, and then begin to draft and review updated supporting actions for those policies. The teams consisted of, as I mentioned, those local communities. So think, Eden Prairies and Minneapolis that are impacted by our regional airports, MAC staff, MnDOT aeronautics staff, Federal Aviation Administration, other airport operators like our South St. Paul and Forest Lake friends, and industry stakeholders, and also Met Council staff as well within those conversations. In addition, through this process, we also went out and presented to local communities and other industry groups that requested additional information and presentations from us through that process as well, and gathered feedback from there. Now, I won't go through all the policies here verbatim, but just know that there's 3 additional policies, and all the other policies really reworked and reoriented to fit into that Imagine 2050 regional development guide and to really align our aviation system with our overall policies. You'll see policy 4 here, which is a new policy really connecting to healthy and safe and also climate to work to reduce emissions from aviation activities. And then you look at here at our dynamic and resilient. Our 2 new policies are looking to really ensure that this plan in the future is maintained kind of and updated pretty thoroughly in all these processes and not kind of just carried over like maybe it's happened quite a bit in the past, but really look at these and consider these a living document to update and really grow with the region. Then also then to think about a little more future-oriented policy here to start thinking about aviation activity that may be taking place outside of our airports in the future. Traditionally, the regional aviation system has been really focused on those regional airports. However, as we're kind of getting those new technologies like drones and other sorts of vehicles that maybe fly, not in airports specifically, but something to think about in the future and set us up for those future considerations. A couple other additional policy language here. If there's any questions, we can certainly go back to these, but we will not dwell on them. Another big aspect of the update was developing what we're calling aviation industry trends, trend reports and analysis. So these trends really are on a lot of different emerging topics and kind of those existing topics and kind of updating information on those. So the first one is on aviation fuels and alternative power sources. So think, electrification of aviation. Think of the sustainable aviation fuel, which has been a big topic in the aviation industry in the region. Then also the next one is advanced air mobility, so also known as air taxis. So that's a industry that's kind of really quickly developing and something we wanted to have a trend paper to understand kind of where it's at now and where we're looking at in the future. Unmanned aerial systems are also known as drones. Another paper on that. Another paper on airport classifications, aircraft noise, and any FAA, MnDOT, and industry changes. You got this presentation. The hyperlink is on the presentation if you want to look at those more in depth. They're about 8 to 10 pages each, so a little read there, but interesting stuff. Also note that these papers too then also led into a lot of our updates on the plan itself as we kind of learn understand more of that industry and how that's evolving. On the actual content, so I just want to highlight a few key areas where we're seeing some changes in the plan. Just so if you look at that updated draft and as an attachment here, you'll understand where those kind of key changes are focused on. Real quick though, we'll look at that overall system of the aviation system today. So it's a mature system. Those airports that we've got today are really the airports that we're going to see probably for the expected future, and also kind of way they're oriented with the runways, things like that, is likely not to see a lot of changes in the near or midterm future as well. The aviation system is built out and those major changes are not expected. We've got 9 regional public use airports. So that's MSP or major commercial, and then 8 relievers to MSP. Of those 8, 6 are owned and operated by the MAC, and 2 of them are owned and operated by their local municipalities. There's also 2 seaplane bases. You see Whipline down there on the Mississippi River, and then Surfside up in Lionel Lakes. All those facilities are really projected to meet forecast demand through 2050. And again, we don't really expect major changes to our facilities to meet forecasted demand. Additionally, a new item on this map here, you won't see just all those airports, but you also see kind of anywhere where you really expect some aviation activity to take place. Think about helipads, private turf runways, agricultural use runways, and then also those special purpose areas and lakes and rivers. So this map really is now containing everywhere where you might expect to see aviation activity, not just those airports. So if you live next to a heliport, you know, you're going to see helicopters, right? If you live next to a turf runway, you're probably still going to see some airplanes. So we thought it was important to include this on the map too, just so our local communities understand that there is aviation activity going to be taking place potentially in their community, just not at an airport. As I mentioned, one of those trend papers we developed was looking at the existing classification system in the region. So similar to our roadways that receive classifications, we also classify our airports to understand their role in the overall system. There's kind of 3 layers of classifications. So the federal, which is known as the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, or NIPIAS, is really a key system here, as this is really what determines what airports do or do not get federal funding. So that's a really key one here. And 8 of our 9 airports, so every airport but Forest Lake is on the NIPIAS system. At the state level, we've got the State Aviation System Plan, which also identifies those classifications and also received a pretty major overhaul a few years ago in their update of the plan. And finally, at the regional level, we have our Regional Aviation System Plan and those regional classifications. You can see here the different classifications at each level kind of compared with each other. So we developed this paper because we really want to look at this classification system as it's kind of been around for a long time and hasn't really changed much. And we thought it might be a time to get a good review of that and see if it's really still connecting with our federal and state classifications, and also working and really representing what those airports are doing in our region. A little background though, so these existing classification system was established in 1977, so almost 50 years ago, and has really seen minimal updates since then. Forest Lake has been upgraded to a minor airport since then, but otherwise all the other airports that were classified in 77 are really the same as they are back then. The last review of the system was done for the 2030 TPP, so almost 20 years ago was the last review of the system, and the recommendations within that were not adopted at the time. One key aspect of regional airports here that's also in state law is that state law dictates that any airport that's a minor airport must not have a runway over a maximum of 5,000 feet. So essentially, if you're a minor airport, you can only go up to 5,000 feet for that runway. It's a really key metric here, as that's the main metric defining our intermediate from our minor airports. However, there's no other metrics required by state law nor restrictions on subclassifications. So if we have a minor classification, we can split those out, which we'll see we are proposing to do with this update. So you can see here, so we're proposing to update the classification criteria to split out that minor classification to be a little more communicative of what's going on at those minor airports in our regions, as most of them are minor. So this update really looks to better define and communicate those roles of those minor airports and to better align with our state and federal classifications. So state and federal classifications have much more nuance than our regional ones. We're really looking to align those with those state and federal classifications as well. So the proposal here is to split that minor category into minor primary. So those are your primary relievers, MSP, that see business jet traffic, that see higher overall traffic volumes, and then your minor secondary, which are your secondary relievers, MSP, which are still relievers. That's their main function. However, they do not see necessarily those larger business jets. They see lower levels of activity, and they generally are more of those recreational users rather than your more commercial, potentially corporate users at those larger ones. So Anoka, Blaine, and Flying Cloud are really the 2 that stand out as different from the rest of our minors, and that they do see business jet traffic. They do see the highest volumes outside of MSP in the region, and they do both have those 5,000 foot runways to accommodate those larger aircraft. In addition to this, I don't have a slide for this, but we do have developed what we're calling report cards for each airport that will be updated with subsequent updates that really have a lot of details. If you want to go in the nuance and details of these, they're in the aviation supporting information page, but a lot of information we want to add for these airports as well and keep those up to date. Another big aspect of this update is updating our forecast for aviation activity through 2050. As we see for MSP, we really want to split these out for MSP and the rest, because MSP is very different than the rest of our relievers. MSP is really nearing those levels of 2019 operation for passenger levels. So we're seeing as many people kind of moving through our airport. However, we're seeing a lot few operations that move those people, which for noise impacts is a very positive trend, as we're moving the same amount of people just with less aircraft. And so you're seeing less noise impacts from that change and kind of how airports are being used. So we're expecting to see that passenger growth continue to grow to 2050, but then those actual operations at the airport are expected to grow, but they will be much slower than the passenger growth. So again, we'll likely see reduced noise impacts in the future, as there's not as many operations need to move as many people. On the general aviation side, we've previously, up until about COVID in 2020, we saw a pretty steady trend of reductions of aviation traffic at our regional relievers from about the late 90s, 9/11 timeframe to 2020. However, since COVID, we've seen that kind of rebound quite a bit, and we're starting to see the activities start coming back to where it was in the past. And we're not expecting to see that rebound growth continue as sharp as it's been, but we are expected to start seeing some steady growth in our reliever airports throughout the region through 2050. Even with that growth, those airports are really built out kind of those early 90s levels, which were a lot higher, and so we're probably not going to need to see any capacity issues in the planning horizon. However, it's something that we'll be monitoring throughout this process. One more key aspect of these plan updates is really looking at what's called the aviation planning process. So this is what really defines how we kind of review these airport long-term comprehensive plans, environmental review documents, capital improvement plans, and things like that. And so this is another big aspect of this plan. And so the aviation plan itself used to be a standalone plan, and then it was kind of rolled into the TPP just for really sake of connecting it with the other modes in our region. These are also included in system statements, so communities out there that have airports or are impacted by airports will see that in their system statements, which will be coming out in about a month here, but that's something that is connected to this as well. Also, this identifies and kind of identifies those long-term comprehensive plan considerations, environmental compatibility considerations, federal compliance, and then also establishing that capital improvement plan review process. One key aspect here I also want to point out is the long-term comprehensive plan aspect. So these are a major component of the plan and also something that we review for consistency at the council. And we have had two come through in the last year that will be that are incorporated in this update. So that's MSP, which came through in 2024, so last year, and is adopted last year. Those updates to that plan has been incorporated into this, and then also Flying Cloud, which we saw recently, has also been incorporated into this as well. And so those are two new plans that we've got incorporated in this plan. So that's an update there. And then also thinking about the actual long-term comprehensive plan itself. So some requirements that were previously in plans, we really want to focus on those and talk with our regional partners, both our communities and our industry partners through that review process to align with community desires and the reality of long-term airport planning. So looking at that plan development cycle, so we do know our cities are required to update their own comprehensive plans every 10 years. So we thought it was appropriate for airports as well to be updating their plans every 10 years as well, to kind of be sure that once you're updating your city plan, that there's going to be an airport plan that you've got updated information on to incorporate into your city plan. And also we're looking to better identify when expected environmental considerations are really reviewed through this process. So similar to city comprehensive plans, right? They're very conceptual and long range, and so you don't do an environmental study for those plans itself. Similar to airport long-term plans, right? They're the conceptual plans that kind of outline what could happen in the future, and then usually almost every time with an airport, they follow up those with an environmental study, either it's an environmental assessment worksheet, EIS, depending on the scale of the projects in the plan. And so we really want to right-size the considerations in the process as well as when we actually consider some of those environmental impacts in the process. Finally, one last big component here is that land use compatibility. Probably the one that most of you deal with the most is that aircraft noise around communities here. So this, there isn't any updates in the actual considerations or how we do that. We've got our builder's guide, which was established in 2008, and that'll continue on until federal regulations are updated, or if they are. We are monitoring that and monitoring the FAA's movements on that. However, we do now have standardized noise exposure maps included in the plan. Previously, they're kind of a hodgepodge of they might show land use, they might not, but now we've got a pre-standardized look, so you can really understand how these expected 2040, 2030, 2050 noise impacts are really going to be looking when you develop your local plans as well, to really be thinking about that land use compatibility aspect with noise. As I mentioned, again, we've got Flying Cloud MSP new contours from the last year. Those are also incorporated in this plan. So when you do develop your local plans, you'll have updated information on those noise contours for planning purposes. So looking ahead, so we've passed the information stage. Now we're moving on to the action item, and so we're here at TAC on the 6th. We're going to TAB in a couple weeks, and finally the Transportation Committee and Metropolitan Council in September to open that public comment period from the end of September into November, and then we'll be holding our public hearing at the end of October. I don't have a slide on the actual recommended motion, so I'll just take that off and show this here, but that recommended motion then would be to recommend to the Transportation Advisory Board that the Metropolitan Council would release the draft 2050 TPP Amendment 2 Aviation System Plan Update for public review and comment. With that said, if there's any questions, I kind of flew through a lot there, so certainly open to any additional questions or information that anyone would like to hear.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Gina. Any questions for Joe? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion. Put him right to sleep, Joe.
Mathis, so
Anybody have a
moved.
motion? And who was that?
Mathis, so moved.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Lissa will second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any further comments? Otherwise, I'd open it up for roll call. All in favor, say aye by roll call. Joe, I'll turn it over to you. Joe Barbaro.
McPherson,
Aye.
Robjan. Robjan. We're here. Labrie. He wants to move on this or vote on it. Labrie.
Aye.
You, Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Mathis,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Culver. He was here
Aye.
earlier. Oh, thank you. Hartzell,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
Han,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Reef, Reef. You were here before. Boylan, there was audio today. McCartney,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Hiniker,
Aye.
Potsukos.
Aye.
Anybody I missed or wasn't able to talk? In any case, 24 ayes and no noes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barbaro. Good presentation, Mr. Whiting. Gina, I'll turn it back to you for the next item.
All right, thanks, Joe. So tech planning had another item at its July meeting, and this was the about the Unified Planning Work Program. And the action that we had in July was to release the UPWP for public comment. That public comment period started immediately after the TAC planning meeting and then closed, I believe, on August 1st. So the action before TAC today is slightly different, and this is to recommend approval of the UPWP. And I believe Bethany has a presentation to walk through this.
Thank you, Chair and members. I have a brief presentation to go through the UPWP for 2026 today. The purpose of this is to describe all of the transportation-related planning activities that the Council will undertake in 2026. It reflects our transportation policy plan, the conversations that we've had with partners, and identifies all that work under 5 different categories of primary work activities. So we have planning and programming processes, our modal and long-range planning, travel research, and short-range planning and performance monitoring. Each one of these activities includes a description of our staff time and cost, any consultant expenditures we expect in that year, the tasks and purposes, and major products. MPOs are required to spend 2.5% of their MPO planning dollars on complete streets. The council spends well above that, and you can see we have complete streets related activities under multiple work activities. And in 2026, we expect a complete streets implementation guide to meet that requirement. Within the 2026 budget, we have about $11 million eligible for federal funding, and about $5.8 million of federal funding is expected. The rest will be covered through local matching funds. Because of changes at the federal government, we have elected to split out all regionally identified planning work. In the past, we've included everything in one document, including things like the right-of-way acquisition loan fund, aviation planning, which Joe just covered, things like travel demand management, and locally directed studies like the Midtown Greenway expansion project. We've also moved over some of our climate and electric vehicle work and equity related work to be entirely regionally or locally funded. As Chair Medico mentioned, we went out for public comment from July 11th to August 1st. We did not receive any public comments, but we did receive some comments from FHWA and FTA, and we are in the process of making those minor text revisions. And MnDOT is still reviewing, but they do not expect any substantive changes to tasks or funding. And then our next steps, we are here today, and if you vote to recommend for adoption, we will be at TAB this month, and then to Transportation Committee and the Council in September. So the recommended motion is on the screen, and with that, I will stand for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Bethany and Gina. Any questions on this item or comments?
I'll make a recommendation if you're looking for that.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Do we have a second?
Seconded, Innocent. Okay.
Thank you, Innocent. We have a first and a second. Any additional comments?
This is Lisa. I do have a question.
Yeah.
So a few times at different meetings, a rural connections, bike connections to the RBTN study, maybe lowercase s study, has been brought up. And it's not in here at all. And I think if I remember correctly, Cole told me that it was basically just work being done internally and not using actual dollars. How is that work? Like, how does the region comment on that sort of work, or how is that work tracked? Is that in a different document? If somebody can comment on that piece of it, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Cole or Bethany, you guys want to respond to that?
I think if Cole wants to discuss the specific work item that Lisa is talking about, I would invite him. Otherwise, generally all internally completed work tasks, if they're significant, should be listed in here. So like the RBTN update process should be listed in here, but any specific work to expand that should probably have an extra line item.
Okay. Cole, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, it is listed under activities under task B4. There's a bullet called develop a new process to create RBTN connections to rural center communities.
Got it. Okay.
It isn't listed as a major product because we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like yet. So we just listed it as a task.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions? All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Mr. Barbaro?
McPherson.
Aye.
Rubjan.
Aye.
Fabry.
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson, Isaacson, Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Mathis,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Lucher,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Culver,
Aye.
Hartzell,
Aye.
Thompson's not here. Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Nick Peterson, or just
Aye.
Peterson. There's no Steve. Collins,
Aye.
on.
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Boda,
Aye.
Eddie.
Aye.
Let's see if Reef's mic is working. Reef. See your vote in the chat. Boylan,
Aye.
McCartney.
Aye. Aye.
Who was that?
That was me. I was being silly.
Oh, I thought I heard two people. AO. AO.
Aye.
Henniker.
Aye.
Otsukos.
Aye.
Chair, that's 25 ayes at least, and nobody says no, and Bridget says aye via chat, so we're good.
All right, wonderful. That one's approved. All right. Thank you, Bethany and Gina. Gina, anything else you want to add as far as the planning committee is concerned?
I'll just note, there are no items in August, and so if anyone here is on TAC planning, you should have received a meeting cancellation notice. So just be aware of that, and we'll maybe see you guys in September then.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate the items. All right, next we'll move on to the Funding and Programming Committee. Now I know that the Vice Chair, Paul Omi, served in place of the Chair, Jim Klasucher, but we do have Jim with us today. Jim, would you like to introduce the items?
Sure, that would be fine. Yeah, as you mentioned, I wasn't able to attend due to some travel plan changes outside of my control. So Paul stepped in, and I think Joe is here for the continuity of the meeting and reporting on what was acted upon. So there's a scope change request. This is a repeat item that TAC had requested funding and programming reevaluate at its meeting in regard to their the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority's technology and ADA enhancements project. So I'll let Joe run with this.
Thank you, Chair Kozlucher. So yeah, this you might remember this from 2 months ago. 2 months ago, you were responding to a funding and programming recommendation to approve the request. I think what happened, well, I know what happened that day was that there was some concern, but there's also a lot of comment on maybe that it wasn't a very complete application. And I think that might be true from both the applicant's standpoint and from my own standpoint as the staff member who A, didn't write up a ton, and B, didn't push them to give me more. So I think what we're coming back with is at least quite a bit more telling than what we had 2 months ago. So as Jim alluded to, we had that sent back to funding and programming. Funding and programming had recommended approval in, is it May now? May, I believe, pretty swiftly. They did the same last month at their July meeting. There were a couple of small questions that are denoted at the end of the action transmittal I'll touch on in a bit. So to summarize again, MVTA was awarded $500,000 in the transit modernization category in the 2022 regional solicitation. And the application was awarded to fund items such as e-paper, static signage, interactive kiosks, platform displays, annunciators, and real-time signage at 53 stops and shelters and 4 transit hubs. Note also that some non-federal dollars have been allocated to support technology and ADA enhancements at Marshall Road transit station. That's one of the pieces from, or the locations from the previous or the original application, along with Eagle Creek Park and Ride. That would be a new location, along with some static sign installations. And I think there's a number of locally funded improvements going on at some of the proposed to be no longer active stations. So MVTA reports that they've had some logistical challenges and additional expenses to establish electrical connections to shelters without existing connections. Additionally, complications have been reported with exterior technology devices, specifically that e-paper, due to weather elements underperforming in our Minnesota's climate. MVTA has prioritized non-federal dollars to support shelter and bus stop signage enhancements in lieu of that. So table 3, I'll scroll down a bit. Table 3 shows the 8 locations that MVTA wants to focus on. And then I did a scoring review in table 1 here. I didn't do that last time. It wasn't necessary, in my opinion, for a few reasons, but one of the reasons being that we did fund every application that was eligible in this category. And, you know, the whole purpose behind scoring analyses is to try to interpret would the project as applied for have been funded originally, which is a very difficult, can be a very difficult estimation to make, but I don't think it's particularly difficult this time since we funded every category here. It had a very nice cushion over the next project in the scoring, which was funded. So based on a scoring analysis, there would be no reason to consider a denial of the scope change request because this would have been funded like this. The question then is, I guess, whether it's a new project. And so that's a lot grayer, and I think reasonable people can argue in both in both directions, I should say. Specifically in transit, though, staff feels there's a precedent, not only from transit projects, but even from some road projects where similar actions were taken to improve the project in light of certain developments occurring. In this case, the e-paper not working out and the weather problems and the high electrical costs. And so I did cite a few of those on the relocation of Southwest Transit from the Golden Triangle to Mall of America in light of the focus on microtransit up to the Golden Triangle area, the movement of a couple of transit hubs along with budget shifting from technology to amenities following assessment of a local safety and arterial BRT planning, and then even a non-transit one. This was in 2015, removing several intersection elements being done elsewhere and then replacing with new intersection elements. So we have had some things like this before. You know, it's a little different animal to pick to implement the most valuable things to a project as opposed to moving from 5th Street to 4th Street as a new project. But again, it's great. This is not looking a lot like the project coverage that we had last time. So the other argument, if there was to be a recommendation to approve the scope change, would be whether or not to fully fund it. You could, for example, there was a lot of talk about the e-paper last time, which is kind of going away. That would have been about $120,000. You could argue you could take away 80% of that. You could argue some other math that hasn't yet been done on some of the stations or stops being removed. The staff didn't recommend any of that, given the some of the precedent that I talked about in those previous projects. And then here's a little summary of what happened at funding and programming. Somebody asked whether the ADA enhancements would change. While the locations will change, while the locations will change, the enhancements will remain the same. And then several of the stops being removed from the project are receiving improvements with non-federal funds, which provides some parallel with some non-transit scope changes in staff's opinion. So for that reason, the staff recommendation was to approve the scope change fully funded, and funding and programming made the same recommendation. So that's what I have for now. We also have Heidi Scholl here, who is the person at MVTA who's been working through this. And with that, I and possibly her would be here for questions.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Or if Heidi wants
yeah.
to say anything I missed, which is quite possible.
Heidi, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that was a good summary, and in the back of documentation details it as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to questions or comments from the group. quiet group today.
I'm a yes on this, but I just make sure MBTA is very prepared at tab to answer questions. I still think this one is going to get a lot of scrutiny. Once again, partially just because transit always does. So I appreciate the updates. But yeah, just be prepared and make sure your staff is there. Because I think it will get scrutiny.
Noted. Thank you for that feedback.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions or comments on this item?
Just want to add for Scott County, it's clear what was being done with this, the way this is laid out here in this transmittal versus what it was before, where we sent it back. We've had some conversations with MBTA, and they had made the commitments they were still going to do the improvements that they had planned before. So we're, I think, good with that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or feedback on this? All right, not seeing any. Would anyone entertain a motion?
So move, Mathis.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Howley.
All right, thank you. So we have a first and a second. Any additional comments or questions? All right, not seeing any. All in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Mr. Barbaro, back to you.
McPherson,
Aye.
Brogdon,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Mathis,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Oslucher,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Culver,
Aye.
Hartzell,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
On,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Reef.
Reefs and I. She just texted.
She's the only blemish so far on our great audio for this one. Boylan,
Aye.
McCartney,
Aye.
Ayo,
Aye.
Hinniker,
Aye.
Kotsukos.
Aye.
Chair 26-0.
All right, thank you, Joel. Thank you for that item. That item is approved. I'll turn it back to you, Jim.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thanks. The second item that was at funding and programming and approved was the 2025-28 St. Paul Arlington Avenue Sidewalk Infill Project Program Year Extension Request. And I'll pass it to Joe to provide just a little background and description of the activities at funding and programming.
Thank you, Chair Kozlicher. The City of St. Paul was awarded $920,000 in Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBGP funds, if you will, in the pedestrian category in the 2022 regional solicitation for the year 2026. The application was awarded to construct new sidewalks on the north side of Arlington Avenue. Let's go to maps here. Oops, maps. On the north side of Arlington Avenue, from Westminster Street to Arkwright Street, on the south side of Arlington Avenue from Gateway Trail to Westminster Street, and DeSoto Street to Edgerton Street. Black lines. The city requests moving the program year from 2026 to 2027 to align with the Arlington Avenue portion of our recently funded street reconstruction project that hadn't been funded prior to application. So this was a local initiative programmed after the passage of the local option sales tax, which occurred after the project award. And so I would say that this is a simple program year extension request that would have been a simple request under either the old or the current policy. So we haven't really tested the new policy yet, in my opinion. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barbaro, any questions on this item? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Yeah, okay.
Second.
All right, thank you, Innocent. I had you as the first and Patrick as the second. Any additional comments or questions? Otherwise, all in favor signify by saying aye by roll call. Mr. Barbaro, back to you.
McPherson,
Aye.
Robjan,
Aye.
Labrie,
Aye.
Ellos,
Aye.
Isaacson. Oh, he left. Reefs and I, thank you. Jensen,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Mathis,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Kozlucher,
Aye.
Howley,
Aye.
Culver,
Aye. Sorry.
Rob, Hartzell,
Aye.
Hager,
Aye.
Mayel,
Aye.
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Collins,
Aye.
On,
Aye.
Fighton,
Aye.
Sabota,
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Reef, as I said, is an aye. Boylan,
Aye.
McCartney,
Aye.
AO,
Aye.
Hiniker,
Aye, and Joe, I just wanted to note, Mike Rogers is here for Ramsey County as an alternate, so you might want to come back to him.
okay. Kotsukos,
Aye.
and in lieu of Mr. Isaacson, Mike Rogers.
Aye.
Chair, that is a 27-0 passage.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. That item's approved. Before we leave the business and committee report section, Jim, is there anything you want to add as far as funding and programming is concerned?
No, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jim. Next, we'll move on to the informational section. We're going to hear a presentation about the Minnesota Go Vision update. Whitney Mason with MnDOT is here to walk us through that. Go ahead, Whitney.
And
You're
Whitney,
welcome.
we never spoke. Do you want me to flip slides or do you want to take control?
Oh, if I'll share my screen if that's all right.
Fine by me.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I also want to introduce Harrison Maxwell, who's assisting me with the Mentimeter portion of this presentation. So anyway, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Whitney Mason. I am with MnDOT in central office in the policy planning unit. I work under Hallie Turner, who you all know, and as does Harrison. So the reason we are here today is because we are updating our Minnesota Go transportation vision. And let me get you set here. All right, are you seeing my screen all right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so why are we here? Did you know that we have a shared state transportation vision? I'm guessing probably the bulk of people in this room do know that, but there are a lot of people we give this presentation to who do not know this. So we're going to talk a little bit about that vision. We are going to ask for your help updating that vision by taking a Mentimeter survey today and asking you to push this survey out through your channels. And then we're going to as I say at the end, going to give you a slide that helps you promote that survey on behalf of all of us. So Our current statement says Minnesota's multimodal transportation system maximizes the health of people, the environment, and our economy. And it does recognize that transportation is not an end in itself, but a means to other ends. So this was initially developed in 2011. There is no state or federal requirement to do so. And we are one of a few states that actually have a transportation vision. And I'd like to point out this is not just MnDOT's vision statement. This is the entire state of Minnesota's transportation vision, though we do use that as our MnDOT vision as well. We hope that this engagement will also inform the update of our next SMTP, which launches this January. And so, as probably most of you know, this vision statement shapes the statewide multimodal transportation plan direction, and then that informs our modal and system plans. Our timeline is as such. We are deep in public engagement right now. We are moving and shaking, rocking and rolling. We are hoping to wrap this up in the June timeframe next year. By then, we will have it all wrapped up and adopted, hopefully by then. This is a really ambitious goal for a statewide plan. This is not a plan, this is a vision statement. So we want to hit that many more people. We want to connect with 3,000 Minnesotans. That doesn't mean we necessarily connect via survey, but through our engagements, we're trying to track our numbers and really get out there in addition to MnDOT staff. So that's a lofty number. We want to coordinate with our other plans. We have a Bike Plus plan here that is being updated currently, and our Greater Minnesota Transit Plan is being updated right now. So we're trying not to overlap too much with those things. We are trying to reach out to districts so we don't, so we all know when we're showing up to table at an event and can coordinate a little bit. Some of our commitments are rolling in late, so some of that coordination is happening pretty last minute, but we are attempting that, and we are providing multiple ways in which people can survey, and those are handwritten at our events. We have everything in 4 languages. Online, we have Let's Talk Transportation as our porthole now for people to come online and take the survey. In-person verbal comments, some people don't want to take the survey, so we take their comments and collect those when we're meeting with them. Our presentations, such as this with a Mentimeter survey, and then our consultant is handling the community-based organization, more targeted input. So that's our Go Mobile, which has been useful at events. We have a cute little postcard to the future that's, you see the little mailbox on the table there. This is, in 50 years, I want transportation in Minnesota to be, and fill in the blank. And this is kind of a nice one for maybe a teenager who doesn't want to color on the car, or doesn't want to fill out the survey. And they fill out the little postcard, put it in the mailbox, flip up the little flag, and it's their postcard to the future, which is adorable. And I have to give Hallie credit for that. That was her very clever idea. And then this is not a completed map. I've asked for an update of this map. We now have events scheduled in the northern part of the state, but we are striving for 2 events in each district and several in the Metro District. So without further ado, we're going to ask you to pull up your phones or pull up on your computers the Mentimeter survey, and we will walk through our questions with y'all. This is an invitation for you to dream. You can use the QR code there, or you can go to menti.com and type in that code there. And I'm going to ask Harrison to share his screen right now.
I also dropped a link to the Menti in the chat if that'd be helpful for you.
Hi, Harrison.
FYI, the Menke code was different on her screen than what you have right here.
Yes, thank you. That code should still work, but yes, every time that we repopulate this Menti, it does generate a new code.
That is good to know. Thank you. Did not know that.
The
All
front
right, and
page code did not work, and the one that's showing now it does. At least that's been
Okay,
my
good.
experience.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's really helpful feedback.
That is, thank you. Yeah, you're one of our first sort of external presentations, so this is good help. And I am going to try not to talk too much while you're thinking and putting thoughtful answers on paper. These are great answers. And so, you know, a vision is the vision statement and then supporting information. And so obviously in a vision statement, I have to keep things pretty high level and broad. And then we hope to capture some of those sort of more refined points in the supporting information for the vision. As well, as I said, this will inform, hopefully be soft first round engagement for our statewide multimodal transportation plan. So we are happy to see what's top of mind for y'all. And invite anybody who wants to talk about their answer or elaborate, put your hand up in the chat. And as was pointed out earlier, a quiet group this morning, so we could just move on to the next one. But I see there's probably a lot of planners in the room here. Oh, everybody's moving on. What are the biggest transportation challenges you currently face? Select up to 3. Oftentimes I've noticed that there are 2 that pop up, and then there's a pretty even spread for a lot of the other ones. Seems a little to be true here too. All right, Harrison, should we move on to the next one? Let's see, we have moved on, so people are jumping ahead. Is that what's going on? Yeah. What aspects of transportation are most important for your future needs? Here again, I'm seeing consistency with other times we've done this survey. All right, let's move on to the next one. Looking towards the future of Minnesota, please select the 3 most important goals that our transportation system should help achieve. Well, I'm seeing something different here than I've seen with other surveys. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. All right, I think we can move on to the next one. Harrison, please. What is one change that would make transportation work better for you? Open-ended response. Tear it down and copy Amsterdam. That's creative. I want creative thinking. We are dreaming, so you're allowed. Wow. You guys are a fun bunch, a quiet and fun bunch. Oh, slower cars on city streets. Yeah, process improvement, always, always, right? All right. What else would you like to share about transportation in Minnesota? Anything we didn't sort of cover that you want to say? We are too focused on maintenance of the system to the detriment of modernizing key corridors. Yeah, and our corridor planning unit here at MnDOT agrees. Best snowplow names. I was just in the state of Tennessee and I was afraid for my life half the time I was driving. We are for sure better than them. I will just say, as a person who lived in Nashville for 3.5 years not long ago, I agree.
I see you're Tennessee and I raised you Texas. That was frightening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we are a big state with a lot of different needs. We've been hearing that a lot too. All right, so folks, we have demographic questions. You're not required to fill these out and they won't populate so that the rest of the group may see, but we do encourage you to fill these out so that we know that we're getting a good cross-section of Minnesotans as we survey across the state. So if you take a couple of minutes to do that, we appreciate it.
I just put this in the chat and I don't know if other people's were responding this way or not, but I answered all of the questions as Washington County, not as myself. So I don't know if it makes sense if you can edit the demographics to say like answering on behalf of my employer or something and like nonprofit, rural, urban, suburban, I don't know, just something that might help you capture that side of things.
Yeah, we'll look into that. That's an interesting question. Molly, you have a question?
Yeah, it's kind of along the lines of what Lissa just brought up, so you're talking to technical professionals working in the field, and I understand these questions can apply to our personal, our personal views or anybody's personal views about transportation. And so just wondering if there's, as you're doing outreach and engagement, will you be tracking whether or not you're talking to policymakers, folks in the field, or the general public? The demographic questions are great and I know what they get at, but just that's kind of it's one of the things I think about with the statewide planning, and then how we at the district level, whether it's Metro District or at the region, we interpret and use the results from any SMTP or Minnesota Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are great questions. I think without thoughtful answers at this moment, we are, getting questions occasionally from people, say some of our advisory committee members who are like, should we be representing ourselves or should we be representing our organizations? And it always boils down to sort of both, right? So we will have some discussions internally about that and
Yeah, and happy
try
to
to be
talk
more
more.
thoughtful.
Happy to talk more about that. You know, we're a distinct stakeholder group, the technical professionals. Not that we're above or below anybody else, but that you know, you're going to get a different perspective, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, thus also the lofty engagement goal we have to really try to sort of expand beyond our little bubble of professionals and, you know, well-to-do people filling out our surveys. So thank you. Yes, I suspect we will be reaching out to Molly to brainstorm about that. All right, so Harrison, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna share my screen again. Right now, I would just like to invite anyone to pipe up about what's on their mind. As I said, we are using this as also SMTP, soft engagement. I want to know what's top of mind for you professionals. Anybody who would like to pipe up and elaborate on any possible change in direction we might see with an update of our vision or the SMTP. Joseph, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
5 years and I still can't do it. I noticed on one of the questions you had a combination of safe and reliable, and I wonder if there's any consideration for splitting that. I care about safe a lot. I care about reliable a little. And then on the next one, safety didn't come up, and I don't remember the exact phrasing of the questions anymore as I was going through it. So something to think about, as at least in our agency, we talk about safety a lot. I know, you know, we're not the intended audience, but something that you could think about, I suppose.
Yeah, on some of the options there is a safety option, and I see the one you're talking about. And as far as the splitting up the safe and reliable, Hallie, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Took me a moment to navigate to my unmute. Good morning, folks. Hallie Turner,
there.
she, her pronouns. I am the policy planning director. So these survey responses are super helpful for us to understand where people are at. So Joe, your comment about the context is really valuable. We write that down and include that as part of our analysis. I didn't catch if Whitney shared what we're doing with this information. This information is helping us to design scenarios to be able to have kind of an informed conversation with some folks at a late fall, early winter workshop. So this isn't going to be super prescriptive in what the final draft vision statement looks like. And your context is really helpful in helping us understand the nuance and differences in some of these. So at this time, we will not split them. But as you are hearing this survey, encouraging others to participate, as you hear comments like this, we would be really grateful if you continue to send them our direction so that we understand that the devil is in the details.
Okay,
Thanks, Hallie.
Cole, you're up
Cole.
next.
Yeah, this is something that I've heard at our policy board at TAB, that I think it would be nice if the Minnesota Vision could address some, you know, perceptions of transportation users that is bordering on disrespectful. I hear comments sometimes about bikers running stop signs as though drivers aren't speeding 90% of the time on roadways. So there's kind of these perceptions that people use to judge the value of users of the transportation system and whether they should be safe or not. And as a biker myself, I just think that that's problematic. It's fine on social media, it's fine in, you know, general public discourse, but it's problematic when it starts leaking into our policymakers. And so if there's a way that the Minnesota Go could address that and create some shared understanding that everybody is doing their best to be safe, I think, for the most part, and that we shouldn't be using, you know, personal experience to make policy decisions. I guess that's just my opinion, but I've heard some pretty concerning comments on TAB about that. So And we don't
Yeah.
have great data to counter it because it's more just personal experience.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying somewhere, somewhere in a high level area of our work. It would be nice to identify this. Yeah, thank you.
Kyle?
I think it would be good to have questions that can parse through what sort of what are the lengths of people's trips and what modes are they using for the bulk of their trips. Say, what percentage of your trips are less than 10 miles, less than 5 miles, or do you most commonly use transit or a car or a bike or walk?
And Hallie, I'm going to invite you to comment again.
Yeah, excellent. Again, devil in the details. Really grateful that you've all are bringing up this feedback, especially at a statewide policy level. We don't always hear these things directly, and really grateful to receive them from you. Both the comment of Cole with perceptions of safety and how we're bringing that into policy making, and then this one about mode as well, I would recommend would be better suited for the statewide multimodal transportation plan. So the vision is really focused on like where are we trying to get to in a couple of generations from now, and the statewide multimodal transportation plan is really helpful at answering like how do we do that. So we have more tools at our disposal for this conversation on like mode split when we get to the statewide multimodal transportation plan. The vision itself tends to be mode agnostic. I keep trying to use that word and I actually got it out this time, mode agnostic. I normally just have to change my sentence, and aspirational. So again, comments are really helpful. We're tracking them as part of our analysis and want to put a pin in this that preview a year from now, you're going to hear about the statewide multimodal transportation plan. So keep bringing these things up for us so that we can make sure that we address them to the extent that we can.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Chris, you're next.
Yeah, I was just curious, looking at the plan and everything that's going on, can you sort of highlight anything that's being influenced by things at the national, federal level, in particular in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, equity around transportation? Is that shifting any of the contents of this plan? Or where are you heading with that? Because I see this is obviously a long-term vision and we've got some short-term issues from direction from a few years ago.
So I will start and let Hallie finish up with that to say that, right now we're in listening mode. We've only just begun, and we are doing scenario planning with our advisory committee beginning this fall, informed by this phase 1 engagement. So a lot of that will depend on what we hear in state of Minnesota. I mean, certainly people's opinions are swayed by what's happening nationally. We don't know yet really what that's going to mean for us here in Minnesota in terms of what we hear. Hallie, would you like to follow up with anything?
Yeah, not entirely surprised by this question, and our team's been working on equity strategic communications, so I feel like we're in even better position to field this. I will be a little succinct in saying we are not proactively complying. We are continuing to stand by our commitments like transportation equity that are in the 2022 statewide multimodal transportation plan and continuing to do work until we're told that we can't. So we just submitted our strategic highway safety plan, also under Whitney's project management leadership, that had equity intentionally embedded throughout the plan. Granted, it did take us a few months to get all 3 commissioners, transportation, public safety, and public health, comfortable with submitting the plan as is. It was submitted and signed by our Federal Highway Administration district office. So we are continuing to put out plans that have equity front and center. We have not changed our language. We have not changed our values. And for the most part, that is how MnDOT is continuing to operate until there is a clear and specific reason that we're told not to.
And I'll just add that August 1st is when that plan was adopted, and it is now up on the MnDOT web pages if you want to go take a look at it. And it's also still up on Let's Talk Transportation. You can look at the executive summary or the whole document, your choice.
I appreciate that MnDOT is following their moral compass until told otherwise.
Yeah, Chris, the last thing I guess I'll share is we have been given policy expectations, right? Like don't do DEI, but we haven't been told how. So in absence of implementing guidance, we don't have direction. And so we're kind of continuing to do our work until we're told how we're supposed to do it otherwise.
Okay, thanks. Elaine, you're next.
Thank you. What I noticed with the survey responses, that in the responses available to select future transportations issues, concerns, there was no response related to the aging population needs. It was somewhat embedded into transportation to health or other stuff. I mean, but it's with more, our baby boomers aging next 10, 20 years, there's going to be a significant change in needs of the current drivers.
And I'm assuming that you used one of your open responses to weigh in on this, right?
No, I didn't. Actually,
Oh.
I didn't go into the survey itself myself.
Oh.
But I was just
well, you will
part
have
of it
the
was I wasn't
opportunity.
sure with it was coming to the responses that there was nothing to select for the concerns. I just backed out of the survey.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
I think that might affect others responding if they start going through it and not seeing, especially at the beginning, the responses that are available to respond to. You might just back out like I did.
Hallie, do you care to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. It's difficult to be exhaustively inclusive with a really high level questionnaire like the one that we presented to you. So it tends to be captured in things, I can't remember the exact wording, but I think it says something like all people or all abilities or something like that.
Right.
So I do realize that then when we're a little bit general, people with unique needs have a hard time seeing themselves in that. This is where targeted engagement is really valuable for us as a project team. So for example, tomorrow I will be with people at the Brown County Fair for Senior Day. So we are trying to make sure as part of our public engagement that we are getting in front of groups who have been underrepresented or have unique or different needs from the transportation system. And especially that free-form question, what else would you like us to know, is a really great place to share that additional context with us.
And
I
what
think
Hallie
that's,
was, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, maybe that needs to be up front, that those type of, if you do not see something in these responses, keep going.
Yeah, the question was looking towards the future of Minnesota. Please select the 3 most important goals. And the one option was welcoming people of all backgrounds and abilities. There was also an open-ended response for that one.
Okay.
Any other questions for Whitney or Hallie? Okay, appreciate the presentation and information. I know that there's some email surveys coming out too that have been circulating. Whitney, anything else we should know about that?
Yes. Please encourage people to go to our Let's Talk Transportation pages and take the survey. If you have information that flows out to other people you work with in the state of Minnesota who would be interested in taking the survey, please encourage them to do so. And I would argue that's anybody living in the state of Minnesota. So thank you for your help in this effort and for your very thoughtful feedback today. I can send, who would I send materials to after this meeting so that if you want to, have a copy of this, you can.
I would send it to Mr. Barbo. He'll get it put in the packet and get it out to everyone.
All right, great. Thank you all so much.
Yep. Thank you. All right, last item we have on the agenda, Mr. Barbo, we got the 2026 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program public comment feedback. Turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chair. This will be quick because we only had 8 comments. So as some of you that follow closely might be aware, we have a very long yet tight timetable for production of the Transportation Improvement Program every year. And so you recommended recommended the tip for approval a couple months ago, and it doesn't come back to you, but we did figure we should probably bring the public comment report back to you. And I think the main purpose is really so you can take a look at it on your own. But I'm going to talk very briefly about themes, and themes are hard to talk about when you only have 8 comments. So as you know, if you've been following the history, we have had anywhere from 2 to 210 comments in the last 10 years on the tip. So you never know whether it's going to get passed around for a specific project or whatever. Last year we had a lot of comments on the I-94 bridges. This year we had more of the standard big picture transportation comments that you don't really even have the opportunity to change the tip for. And so I'm gonna sort of quote Amy Venowitz on this. This kind of becomes a process where we take in a lot of comments and we pass them on and sort of help use them to help us in our overall program. So for example, if you made a tip comment that says, I would like a bike trail at this place in my neighborhood, we couldn't do that because there's no project scoped out. So the tip is really a collection of projects that have gone through a lot of process. But that said, I will talk briefly about what we saw here. So we only had 8 total comments, like I said, but we had a lot of visitors to the webpage, 1,600 on our Facebook, a lot of LinkedIn views, a lot of Instagram views. We mailed it to 3,400 and some people. So there were a lot of people that had the opportunity and even looked into this. And like I said, this time we didn't really see a lot of comments. So we had some themes, which as you see, we sometimes have one commenter establishing a part of a theme. Roadway safety, I think in our office, we talk about roadway safety a lot. And I think that's becoming a little bit more common outside with the general public. Our roadway capacity, a couple of folks, 4 people are skeptical about capacity projects, suggesting that maybe they don't pan out in the long run. 3 commenters didn't agree with a low funding for transit, so this funding distribution more of a modal distribution for the most part. And then land use, 1 commenter stated concern about roadway infrastructure encouraging sprawl. So these are the kind of big picture projects that, to be perfectly frank, we're not going to necessarily take and change this tip for, but we do appreciate these comments. We had a public meeting on June 17th, I believe, where none of the comments that you see here came from that meeting. Nobody made a comment per se, but we had a lot of talk with about only 3 people, but it was a very fruitful talk about our processes and how transportation planning and programming occurs. So those are the kind of opportunities I think that some citizens and some people connected with our sponsors take advantage of, and I think they're valuable even if they don't really change the tip. So that's really all I have. With that, I would take questions. The next step is that TAB would recommend the tip for approval at its meeting in 2 weeks, and then it goes to the Transportation Committee and the Council. That would be Council in early to mid-September, and then we bring it to MnDOT, who incorporates it into its STIP, as many of you know if you program or if you deliver projects. And then it gets federal review, which usually has occurred around federal approval has usually occurred around November 1st. I don't know if staffing would change that this year, but that would be the hope at this point. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Pretty standard process we go through every year. So, okay. Well, without any questions there, we'll move on to the next one, which is other business. Anyone have any other business or interesting topics for the group?
I apologize. I thought I was sharing my screen and I wasn't.
No problem. No problem. Okay. I think everyone's pretty quiet this morning. They got other things to do. So without any other topics, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.